And finally this evening on SA Tonight, if you are planning to hit the beach this weekend but are worried about sewage levels in the sea, particularly in and around Durban, this is for you. An innovative team from the University of KZN has come up with a quick response to anyone wanting to know if the E. coli levels in the sea are safe for swimming. I'm joined now by Dr. Justin Pringle, UKZN's Environmental Fluid Mechanics Lab co-director, and the lab recently launched the Wazolwandle website. Doc, thanks so much for joining us. So this website was launched in March. I would imagine it was a case of necessity being the mother of invention, that you realized beachgoers just needed to know how safe the beaches were after all the problems with sewage in and around Durban.
Yeah, hi, thanks for having me. That's exactly it. So my colleague and I, who work very closely together, we're having this discussion towards the end of last year, when, our ministers were, our mayors were taking dips in the sea, and we were just wondering, about the state of our beaches and whether or not, they were going to be closed or open. And so we discussed a very old model that my colleague developed about 20 years ago for the exact same problem. I had the idea, let's kind of repurpose it and put it into an app for the public to use. So, I mean, the model, although the back end of it is quite complicated in terms of, we are physicists by training, so there's a lot of heavy mathematics and physics involved in it. The idea is just to give the public simple information so they can make informed decisions. So it gives the users real-time and forecast data, and people can plan their days at the beach, where to swim, and when to go.
From doing a lot of interviews around that time where the beaches really were in a difficult place, I understand quite a lot of them are sorted now, mostly. The readings can change from day to day. So how do you get the data? Do you have people going down testing, or do you pull it from different labs? How sure are you that it's reliable data?
Yeah, okay. So just a comment on that in terms of whether or not the beaches are fixed. This is a problem in terms of water quality. It's a global problem in the coastal zone, wherever you have cities situated close to the sea. So, it's never really fixed. It will always be a problem. Whenever it rains in a city, all of that water falls, onto the city, and it collects all the dirt and the stuff in the city. That goes into your stormwater drains, and then that bad stuff in the water, in the stormwater drains, eventually lands up in the coastal waters. And typically your wastewater treatment works are always mostly situated on banks of rivers. And if there's any power failures...
Yeah, that's a good point, actually,
anything goes wrong, they're going to just, unfortunately, they have to just discharge directly into the river, and that's going to come out. But just a point that it is a global problem. It's not specific to Durban per se. And as I mentioned in the beginning, my colleague, eThekwini were having these issues from 20 years ago. They did have a monitoring campaign, so they are, trying to be proactive about it as much as you can. And that's where we thought we could come in and help, is to actually provide users with real-time information. So essentially how it works is a monitoring team will head down to the beach or the river. They'll take a water sample, and they'll process it in the lab, and then about 24 to 48 hours later, people at the beach will know what the state of the water was. Obviously, this is a bit of a problem because it's 24 hours too late, but that's just a practical limitation. And so that's where our model comes in to plug that gap. So at the moment, we've teamed up with Talbot Labs, and we use their sample data, and we feed it into our model. And then our model makes predictions based on the current state of the weather. So, if it's raining and what the wind speed and direction is. And then we pull in global forecast data from the eNCA guys in the US. And then we run our model to make predictions on, how much E. coli is going to be in the coastal zone and based on the wind speed and direction, where it's going and how long it's going to stay in a certain area.
All right, so this is so interesting because it's not as simple as just taking results from a water sample. You fed in a whole lot of other information, as you say, the weather, the wind, etc., which can all affect how sewage and E. coli moves and how the sea is impacted. So I had a look at your website. We're going to bring it up. And you rate on three things. You say good, acceptable and poor. Now, good obviously means it's totally fine. What I want to know is, if you swim at an acceptable beach, does that mean you might get sick? Take your chances? What does acceptable actually mean?
Yeah, so this is always a bit of a problem, right? And we do have water quality guidelines, published by DFFE, which are largely based on the European guidelines, which give you indications based on the level of E. coli, what the risk of getting sick is. So it's probably important, and that's also another reason why we created this website, is to start a conversation around this, because it's actually a national problem. There are issues in Durban, there are issues in Cape Town, there'll be issues on the East Coast and the West Coast, and we've got a very complex climate. But essentially, E. coli is a bacteria that is found in us and animals and mammals, and it's actually harmless. So that is often a misconception, that it's harmful, and really it's an indicator of all the bad stuff in the water. So typically, what studies have found is that if you have high levels of E. coli, you have other things like viruses and other.
And that's why people, of course, have been getting sick. I'm so sorry to rush you, but we're coming to the end of the show, and I have an Easter egg waiting for me at home. But very quickly, what's the response been? Is this something that could go national, possibly even international?
Yeah, that's our goal, is to make it go international and national, and the response has been good. So we've been the website's launched at the beginning of March, and we've had about 5,000 people view it. It's been very well received in the surfing and swimming community, and yeah, the idea is, like I said, just to provide people with that information and develop water quality standards here in South Africa.
Well done to you and your team. I think it's an absolutely brilliant idea. So that is the Wozolwandle website, and that basically is not just going to tell you the water treatment test, but it's also going to input a whole lot of other information to tell you if that beach is safe to swim at.